and welcome to AFP. My name is Devang and Sean. I'm joined by the usual suspects, David, Goss, and Sean K. On today's show, we talk our imminent departure, dun dun dun, dramatics, our favorite moments of the show. We chat about what we've missed in Canadian soccer and US soccer. Chats up MLS is back. Plus, for the final time, we open up the mailbag for another edition of Ask AFP. So yeah, we didn't bury the lead. I said our departure right off the top, but yes, this is the final show of AFP, at least in this form, for David, Sean, and myself. 3 years really does fly by. I cannot believe it's been that long, and this show started in the middle of a gosh darn pandemic. But we can safely say that AFP helped thwart COVID, and without us, I don't think Fauci's able to do anything, frankly. So yes, you're welcome, everyone. AFP saved the day. We did it, everyone. We did it. Jokes
Joe,
aside.
we did it.
Joe, we did it. Joe, the camel call. Jokes aside, though, holy cow, guys. 3 years. Love doing the show. Love talking to you every week. Love forming friendships and building on friendships. I hadn't met David before doing the show, and now I consider him a good friend. So I feel bittersweet about today because I think we all have other things on the go, and that's kind of why we're taking this absence. But yeah, that's the word on the street, fellas.
Yeah, Devang, immense sadness. So as you said, we've become really close over years. Sounds weird, by the way. It feels like we've been doing this for 4 months, which I think is a testament to how enjoyable it's been. And I knew Sean before and big fan of Sean. So it's been, an honor getting to do this with him. And, but we've become really close, and we don't say it as a joke. Like, the Discord's become, a staple of my life. I don't mute the notifications. So Megan, it's become a staple of her life as well.
That's the highest praise you can give.
100%, because I mute every group chat.
Same. Oh God, same. You can't survive with this many group chats popping off.
No.
Right?
So yeah, it's just been awesome, and I've learned a ton, which is the thing that I probably value as much as anything, and that's been really cool. My Canadian geography's still a little off. I think I got slammed in the Discord as a random ETR host who didn't know Saskatchewan, which I was making a joke about, but it's still a little bit off. But yeah, it's just been great, and it's been something that I've been proud to be associated to and enjoyed doing. And so it sucks that we're going to be done doing it, but we're all going to stay in touch. And that, I think Clay said best, it's not goodbye.
Exactly. I think the one, there's a lot of, not regrets, but the one thing that I really wish that we could have done, that we didn't get to do is a live show, and not even just in front of an audience. That would be incredible. But just the three of us in a room.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's been the craziest, is that the three of us have sat here chatting, for me, on and off for 3 years, and then you guys for 3 years without having facial recognition, day in and day out, and then being in the same space. And so I think that's something that I would give you guys so much credit for being so good at creating this community and vibing off of each other, off of just voice alone, week in and week out. It's just it's never felt like there's this disconnect, and I think that's a credit to you two. It's been a great show, and it's sad. Obviously, there's nobody here that is happy that it's over. So it's yeah.
So me and Devang have still never physically met.
Yeah.
And the only reason I know he's super tall is because Nick Andrade is surprisingly super short, and they met at a World Cup qualifier. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know that about you guys.
That meeting has to go down as one of the top 5 moments in recent memory of meeting
agree.
Nick for the first time. You're like, what? I work with Nick now. So again, another small world outside of the show. Yeah, you guys said it well. I will say, no breaking news here, but I, along with probably a lot of people, were in quite a dark place around the middle of 2020 in terms of just general vibes and things being poor and bad and virusy. And I found this show to be quite the lifeline. And it's funny you said that, Sean, that I haven't met David, but he's one of those people that I think you quickly get to know and you can quickly understand is just a great dude and someone I love chatting footy with. And Shawnee, I've known you for a long time, and from our TFC days to rekindle this passion of ours and talk footy has been absolutely awesome. And when we talked about doing something like this years back, I was hoping it would be something like this. So I think in that regard, I can only be thankful. Just to recap what we have covered, because running down this list, I won't lie, I maybe memory hold half of these things, or frankly forgot them because I have brain damage. But the Island Games happened, that MLS's back tournament happened, TFC hired and then fired Chris Armas, the Canada qualification run, the U.S. men's national team's rebuilding qualification, both teams in the World Cup, the epic quiz show in which I prevailed. A lot to pick out from there. I don't know if you guys have a highlight of these. I mean, obviously I think Canada's run from the early days of David terrifying us about Suriname.
Okay.
And their lethal
I knew this was coming.
That was going to kill. From that moment, I think what a journey. So I want to pick qualification, but that might be too easy.
Can I just say, Geraldo Becker won Bundesliga Player of the Month and is the best attacking player on what was a Bundesliga champion contender up until like 2 weeks ago. So I sort of feel vindicated on the Suriname thing.
Is that really the gauge? That is how you've been vindicated? Geraldo Becker's individual exploits for Union Berlin? Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, I just kept saying they're better than you think. This isn't a bad team.
It was good though. It was good. It was good. But the preparation was key, and I think your zealotry, your love of CONCACAF was extremely valuable for us as we had to start from the very bottom and make it all the way to Qatar.
And to be perfectly honest, like, this was Canada before the World Cup qualifying. Like, we were afraid of any moment at any opportunity. So like, of course you're going to go in and be like, you're right. Like, no matter who you were playing, there's a chance, there's a slip, there's a sickness, there's a something, and Canada's out before we even get to the party. So no, I am with David here. I was going into that Suriname being like, well, let's see how this goes. So
Devang was so mad at me, though, after the game when he was like, 3-0? That wasn't even that hard. Are you kidding me? I also appreciated that was when they were playing in Bridgeview, which is still like the weirdest part about the whole thing, in front of empty crowds. And so it was like you just hear Milan celebrating on all the mics after all the games. And we did a couple live post-game shows to that, which for me was really exciting because we've talked about it a lot. I root for Canada. I feel pretty closely connected to the soccer scene in Canada. I've been excited about it for longer than before they qualified for the World Cup. But those were great for me because I got to live it through you, through all of the fans of the show in Canada, but especially you, Devang. And like with the US, it didn't feel the same. We have like crazy fans and all this other stuff going on. And so like that Canada experience felt like what I originally felt like when I became a USA fan back in like 2002 and 2003, and coming out of COVID when it was like, nothing matters. Everyone plays 500 games. There's no fans, no energy to it. Like that was really a big spell of games for me that kind of got me back going. And so I thought that was one of the best things we've done. And the Island Games, because I'd never really watched CPL, to be honest. I didn't watch that much year one outside of like the final and the first game at Forge and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed that whole tournament, especially the CGI stadium that they played.
Predicting the future.
That was a decision. There's a lot of decisions during COVID, with like, whether it be 3D stadiums or like ad boards up in the stadium covering things that continue to move, that were just so bad. I'm ready to talk like 2 years removed, being like, what were we thinking? I know we have make goods. I know there are things that need to be paid for, but the graphic package just wasn't good enough. And I hope to God that we never go back to that.
In their defense, I feel like that might have been like bullet 18 on the to-do list to get this thing off the ground, but maybe it should have been higher because aesthetically, I think I'm with you. Fascinating to see how all those leagues adapted and like how they held those games behind closed doors. Just reflecting on the Canada run personally, like I shattered my jaw during that run too, but I distinctly remember watching the Mexico game in my sister's house with my jaw still wired shut and being like, this is amazing, but not being able to say that out loud, but just being able to see that, experience that, and then feel fine, return to health and be able to enjoy the rest of the run. It felt like a full circle moment when Canada got in and then ended up playing in the World Cup and scoring that goal and captivating our hearts by really taking it to a dysfunctional Belgium team. Which, just want to say, Roberto Martinez getting that new job to lead a new national team after that is just incredible. Absolutely incredible.
After Hazard said it was unfortunate that I played at this World Cup. I shouldn't have played. And then the guy who coached him and made that decision got hired for an even better job.
It's just great. It's just fantastic. And all the Portugal fans hated their current coach and they got this guy. So it's great. That's why we love this game, guys, right? That's why we love the sport. The qualifying was great. Shout out to Chris Armas. I think that was an exhilarating run of terribleness that really brought back some memories of TFC of old.
Remember the CCL game though against Leon at IMG or at Disney? God,
yes.
When Nobel played Nobel Akella balled out and Luke Singh was good.
I'll tell you, we dreamed big that day. Oh God.
Everything was possible.
Chris Armas, if you were to tell him that at the start of this job that he would then move on to the Premier League and be involved with Manchester United and Leeds, he must have been like, holy shit, I did ball out in MLS.
Yeah. He's like, I won CCL, supporter shield.
Yeah, but kudos to him, man. Good on him to keep finding those jobs. It's wild.
Got it. Great interviews. You got to be good in interviews to get jobs, and some people clearly excel at that. I feel kind of he seems like he's in a bad way at Leeds because he's still on the staff, but he's been phased out effectively by the new manager. And I think he was quoted as saying, "We don't need any more help," which I think might be the most upsetting thing to hear. If I am a coach on a team and they're like, "No, we got this, man. We got the cones," and they take the cones from him and shut the door, but. Jobs are jobs. He's in the Premier League. He'll be fine.
Don't worry. He'll be the assistant on the U.S. men's national team when Jesse takes over, right, David?
I'm not even mad about that.
No, I'm just being. That's what's going to happen, right?
Listen, clearly he's good at being an assistant coach.
Completely. You know? I am.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
And if that means Jesse's the coach and not Zidane, then I'd be fine with it.
All right. So obviously the show was born during a global pandemic where no one could meet up, and that took a lot of work from people behind the scenes. So we have to thank several people, including Clay, who Sean mentioned, the guy who runs the Space Monkey ship and who wanted to hear us talk about soccer, frankly. And that's kind of how the show started. But without his backing, that is just, the show is not possible. So a massive thanks to him. And of course, the brilliant minds who we talk with every week and who help us produce and make the show sound good. Dylan, Greg, Nick, who is with us for quite a while and just a wonderful dude to meet and become friends with, and Zach, who joined us a bit later. All phenomenal people who really helped us make this show sound great and also were wonderful to work with.
Yeah, Devang, Sean mentioned like we've done this show remote, and what made it easy was having other people have our backs and, working on it so hard and, making it sound great, making it fluid to be able to do it. So really thankful to Dylan and Greg who helped there. And then Zach, who's come on more recently, but really to Nick. And you mentioned when you broke your jaw, like he stepped in as another host, and he did it numerous times when I was out and you were out. And obviously I always made fun of him on the mailbag. But he brought a lot of energy to the show. He loved doing it. He was passionate.
I don't think they win the Premier League without Nick Andrade. Let's be real here.
I also don't think it's a coincidence that he left and now it's all falling apart.
Plummeted, exactly.
So no, but a big shout out to him because we wouldn't have been able to do any of what we did without him.
Yeah.
And so he's not with us on this record. So I just want to make sure to give him his due.
Of course, our guests as well. Really, really thankful to be joined by so many people we admire in the soccer world and outside of the soccer world as well. I think we've come from different paths, and I think that allowed us to talk to a variety of different people, and that's what I enjoyed a lot about our show. I think you've been getting a fresh dose of that from our replays, but we talked to some really cool people about their journeys in this game and how, or maybe how they want to see soccer be played, which I think is something that we think about and talk about quite a bit on this show. So many thanks to those people, and of course, the last thanks, but probably the biggest thanks, is to our Patreon family who've supported us for 3 years and have really fostered a great community that, like David, I check every day and love checking and seeing what's going on. Times when I wasn't able to stay up on things, is the Discord is the first place I go. But I think beyond that, just the people in there and the kindness and the warmness of the group in terms of their support means the world. Their money was fantastic, but I think it just shows what kind of folks they were to devote their hard-earned money to us talking about soccer a couple hours out of the week. But means the world, and we're going to try and keep this Discord running because, like I said, the conversation there is great. But yeah, Sean, David, I'm sure you guys agree. The Patreon community was so huge and definitely motivation to keep doing the show week in and week out.
Yeah, shout out to Mel, Seth, Jason, S. McGinnis. I know I'm missing other people here. Patrick, some, just always with us and talking with us. Again, with us being remote and especially during some of this time, you feel like you're talking into a vacuum. And then it becomes a conversation when you all sort of would chime in and talk about the things we were talking about, caring about the things we were caring about. As I said, I've learned a ton. Especially with the CPL and the growth of it and the women's game in Canada, areas that I didn't know as much about. And that's been really helpful. Someone, gave me the bar that I ended up going to before the U.S. played Costa Rica in the final World Cup qualifier in San Jose, Costa Rica through the Discord. So yeah, it's been awesome. And it feels like a warm blanket, and it's a happy place to talk about soccer. And the internet is not always that. And so I'm really appreciative of the way it exists.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. And just like, I think finding like-minded people through like technology, is a hard way, is hard to find, but when you do find it, it's like sort of creating a nest and creating a home, and you can just return there and feel warm and feel great. And we've been really lucky with such a great community to be able to help us keep this going for so long. And once again, this is not for like anything other than just like continue to push that forward, people, that like creators want to do this and build communities and continue to respond and build these groups, because they're special. Some of the greatest things that I've ever been involved with have been through internet communities, whether it be Toronto FC fan clubs, whether it be this. It's just, you can build something really special, and just so continue to do so and support creators on Patreon.
Can I make one last Patreon request?
Yes.
So I stumbled, actually, I was walking the other day and my podcast finished and it rolled into an episode of AFP. Which sounded great. And it was an interview. I think it was an interview that we did with Darius Barnes. And I like interviews. So ideating on potentially doing other things in the future, if there is someone that you think should be interviewed, put it in the Patreon, put it in the Discord. I'm trying to work on a list of people. So yeah, sorry, I'm making everyone do my work again.
That's what we call a tease in the biz, ladies and gentlemen. Wowza. All right. Do that. All right. Before our conclusion down memory lane, or our final stroll down memory lane, maybe back to the origin of this all. SK. Spring 2020. We're all scared as shit about things melting down, and this show gets made. But maybe take us through that time. Yeah, no, it's the spring of 2020. Things are sort of all over the place. Things aren't what they seem in business, etc. And I think it was a moment of let's get our creative juices flowing. Prior to, there was another iteration of a football podcast, and we still had the root and the feed, and it's like, okay, what's this next step? What do we need to do? And I think sort of going down lists of like, it just can't be me talking. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to hear that. So it's like, who am I looking to talk to? And you go through your Rolodex of who you know, who would be a good combination. And something that has been at the top of my Rolodex anytime I think soccer in the last 12 to 15 years of my life has been to call on you, Devang, whether it be working at the Score, or I'm looking to hire at Toronto FC, or if I'm looking to start a podcast. It's knowing that you have this depth of knowledge, this understanding, this great hosting ability that you've really grown into in the last few years, that like I would say like has been incredible, a growth from you. But like I just always knew that you would be entertaining, reliable, and just a great lead. And then a wish list for me, and this, like David has talked about being quote unquote a fan of mine. I've been an ETR stan when I worked at TFC before then, when it was a different iteration. But if you were to say number one, what do I want from anyone out of ETR? Sorry, everybody else, but it's David. And so putting those two on the list and just going and hoping, and then both being easy yeses, it was just like, well, we got to do this then. It was bizarre in such a weird, dark time that like the two people that I wanted to bring together to do this immediately were like, oh yeah, I'm interested. Let's see how we can do this. So it was, yeah, it was that weird moment of like, I have these creative ideas. There's this opportunity because a lot of the business that we were working on at the time sort of shut down because we were trying to get access to locker rooms, and nobody's opening a locker room to other people at the time. So yeah, it was great. What was your thoughts, David, when I first reached out to you and was like, hey, I know we've had a couple beers and chatted soccer and spent time together in other projects, but was immediately like, let's do this. Let's push things forward.
Yeah. I guess we never talked about this, which is now hitting.
No,
me. But yeah, we've met previously, but I can say the most time I remember us spending time together was in Mexico for the 2018 CCL final. And we got food, and you guys interviewed me, and we hung out and talked and went to the game. And at that point, you guys had left TFC and were working as Space Monkey. And I just remember, I think Dylan was there as well. And I was like, why did you leave? What are you doing? And it was kind of like, well, we all like each other and we all wanted to work together. And this was a way to make it happen. And we get to do the projects we want to do. And I was so jealous the entire conversation, because I was like, this sounds awesome. And one of the things in my experience, and obviously I do a lot of work with ETR, and so I've worked with Andrew Reeby for a while, but outside of that, I'm a freelancer. I don't really have a team. I cover teams, and it sounds great, but I don't get to work with the team. And I was genuinely jealous when you guys talked about that and sort of the group you had built and the way you guys can all rely on each other. And so I think I said to you, if you're ever looking for someone to work with then, on something, I'd be interested, because that was why. And so when you called me, I had, and you were like, oh, we're thinking about this show, and Devang, who I'd never met before. And I was like, you are a person that I would have trusted in that setting. And I did, that you are putting good people together. And it was at a time when I wasn't sure how good everyone was in the world. So I was out on a limb on that one. But yeah, it was really exciting for me to get that call. And I've learned through doing this that I do really respect everything. Obviously, you've moved around a bit, but you and Clay had built and do build, and you operate the way that people should operate, which isn't always a given in this industry. Plus, I was looking for a way into Canadian passport at the time, in the height of 2020. So it seemed like a pretty good option for me.
And then Devang, when I had sort of brought up David's name, and you're like, well, I don't know who this guy. What were your thoughts of doing a podcast with somebody you had like zero relationship with?
Great question. I didn't have any sort of apprehension. I kind of maybe was more thinking about how it would work, or like, would it be weird or bad? Like if we had no prior relationship and we got into recording, and you could like tell kind of from the get-go, it's like, this isn't going to work. So I think there was some fear I had of that being the case, but I think it took me like, I'm not exaggerating, possibly 1 to 2 minutes to be like, oh no, this will work. This dude is, he's fantastic. And I mean, it's been a joy. And you're talking about learning stuff. I think I've learned more than I care to admit about North American soccer, thanks to you guys and thanks to this show and getting fully immersed in all things that this sport has to offer, especially closer to home, which I think is an important thing. So I was amped to get back into it. I think I was missing that TFC hole in my heart, and I think this show was a way to get back into that. So having David being amazing to work with was something that was a pleasant surprise. But I also, like he said, I was confident in the squad we were assembling, Avengers style. So I guess that makes Sean Nick Fury in this scenario. But yeah, that's the last reference I'll make.
That's not a bad connection.
I can't believe I made a Marvel reference. I'm not even a super fan, so please don't come at me, Spielberg heads and my film.
It's okay.
Film buffs, yeah.
Fast and Furious is now Marvel movies, so
it's true.
Brie Larson, Jason Momoa, they're the same movie.
The best one. That is actually my biggest regret that we did. We actually will do a final episode.
We got it.
Theater.
Yeah,
we got to get together for
the movie. We'll just
Fast
have like
X to be family ends forever.
Oh man. All right. I guess we could talk. Maybe we'll talk what's next at the end, and we'll get to the mailbag. So when we come back after the break, we will open up the mailbag for the final time. Got some great questions from our Patreon community, so hope you enjoy it. Coming up next.
And welcome back, and it's sadly now time for our last edition of Ask AFP, where Devang and David will do their best to answer all of your questions. Once again, thanks to everyone who sent their questions in through the Patreon Discord. We have a lot to go through today, so let's treat this like a final, lay it all on the field, and no substitutions, okay?
And this is going to go 120 plus penalties?
Oh, completely. And then with modern extra time, there's going to be like 7 to 15 minutes of it. So we'll see how long it goes. Matty J goes first. Because we didn't really have a preview show for this year's MLS season, Devang, let's start with you first. Could you give us your Supporter Shield, MLS Cup, and Canadian Championship winners?
I'm feeling very thankful people have forgotten that I picked Charlotte to win MLS Cup.
No, you didn't.
I think I did. I might have been.
Oh my god!
Though I might have something. I might have been having a moment though. So I thank you so much to everyone for forgetting that happened. Okay, revised picks, small sample size, etc. But I have this feeling about Cincinnati this year, so I'm gonna pick them to win the Supporter Shield, but not MLS Cup. I think MLS Cup will be taken by an old friend of ours in Nashville. He's might be on the national team sooner than later.
The
Jacob
Shaft?
Schaffelberg. Big Shaft.
Oh,
The Daniel Lovitz pipeline is alive and well. Shaft is killing it. But yeah, I mean, Nashville is not a sexy pick at all. And watching some of their games was one of the more painful experiences recording the show. But I will pick them to win the MLS Cup. Canadian Championship. All the MLS clubs are bad. So with that in mind, how about Forge wins it? How about we get a Forge title?
David, what do you think?
I'm glad that I get to do this for a second time. That's not before the season starts.
Yeah, you got 3 games.
Yeah, no, this is amazing. So for Supporters Shield, I'm going to pick Seattle. They look to be back to themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't have CCL. So that's a little bit of an advantage for them. I don't know what Leagues Cup's going to look like and all that, but I think they've got enough pieces to contend across the year and have a little bit of an advantage over LAFC. I also think the West is, well, the whole league might be weak. I'm not totally sure. I do think there's some easy points in there for them. So I'm going to take Seattle. I'm going to go Philly for MLS Cup. I'm going to stick by that. I think they still are who they are. I think we don't know what Andre Blake's injury is. I think they'll put a decent amount in CCL. Watch they lose in an hour and a half after I say that. And other competitions. But I think when you get back into the MLS Cup playoffs, like I think the format fits them pretty well. More games to just blitz you off the field and stick to their guns. And so if a bounce goes against them, we know that they can sort of continue on. And so I'm going to go that. And then for Canadian Championship, it is tough because as Devang said, all the MLS teams suck. The other thing is Toronto has a bye that Montreal will face them if they beat Vaughan, which, am I right in saying this is the first time Vaughan, Azzurri are in Canadian Championship?
You better believe it.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome because this is one of those names that like is in every player's profile that I work with.
Yeah.
Whether it's college soccer, drafts, USL, MLS Next Pro. And so it's like, it's a big name to me. I'm like, oh, he's a Vaughan Azzurri guy. And people are like, I don't know what that means. And so, so that's pretty cool on its own. So I'm going to take Vancouver, I think. I do think Vancouver is fairly competent as a team, even though they have not performed well.
You have to specify now which one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Is that a thing?
Yeah, Vancouver is a
CPL
CPL
club.
team now.
Yeah, but like, don't they
Called
have
Vancouver.
to earn status as Vancouver?
You're calling them Langley. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, based off the way Pacific and Vancouver Whitecaps went early on, it might not take much for them to earn that spot.
And when they officially announce Camillo to join their squad, it'll all change pretty quickly.
Camilo Sanvezzo is rumored to be signing. I think they already signed. Did they sign Caden Chung?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
Whew, big club.
Big club. I'll go quickly. I'm with you in regards to, I think Seattle's going to be the team to beat this year. If Jordan Morris stays healthy, I think he might have an MVP in him. I think that he just needs to play the game and play at this level, and I think that he'll be one of the best players in the league. MLS Cup, I have no trust in Philly. Like, I understand what you're saying, but I honestly don't know. I might go LAFC again, and the Canadian Championships, I'll go ahead and go TFC. I think that they need wins. They need to be in the big tournaments, and I think they're going to treat it more serious than the other two clubs. That being said, who's healthy? I don't know. Moving on to the next one, we got Mikey, and he asks, what is your favorite MLS stadium to watch a match that is not your hometown club? Mike said that Lumen Field was his favorite. David, let's go with you first.
This is a really tough one for me. And I enjoy a lot of the atmospheres. I assume this is, it's in MLS. It literally says MLS Stadium.
MLS. Yeah.
So I obviously have a list of like 9, but off the bat, the first three that came to mind for fun, if I was going to a game, the experience would be, I think, Portland, Toronto, and DC were the first three that came to mind because they all have good atmospheres. They're all soccer stadiums. And we can talk about Seattle and Atlanta and stuff like that. But it just feels different in a soccer stadium. And they're all accessible. Like a lot of the MLS stadiums that are good, a KC, sounds like Nashville now. You have to like drive. It's a whole thing. You got to get out there. And it's like, I take the train or walk to Toronto whenever I'm there. Same with DC. Portland, I use an electric scooter to like ride the quarter mile to get to the game. So all of those are to me like the ideal scenarios of a game, and all of them hit. Portland would probably end up number one just because the atmosphere is unique and special and fun. And I think I've only ever been there for Seattle games. I think the only time I've seen Portland home in person was MLS Cup, a playoff game against Seattle, and a rivalry game against Seattle. So I've been pretty fortunate as well.
Ooh, good picks. I think I might go Providence Park, Portland. I haven't been there many times. I think I was only there twice, but each time I was there, it left a lasting imprint on me, I would say, as an experience in the league. I mean, there's a few places that are like that, more than a few, but I felt like that was a special atmosphere as a visiting person watching TFC there. So I'll go with Portland.
I'm shocked neither of you said Gillette Stadium. I believe that.
Listen, I love Toby Keith's Bar and Grill as much as the next person. But if that is your biggest restaurant outside the stadium, come on.
Yeah, I'm going to give, because you guys have taken Portland, and I think Portland is number one for traveling. I will say from overall experience of like remove fandom, but like sight lines and stadium and everything, I still think Red Bull has the best park in Major League Soccer. It is just so special. The sight lines are great. It's built so well. I love it so much.
That Arsenal Red Bulls match I watched there was incredible. It was so, and I mean, for a weird friendly, which has no stakes, it felt really impressive. I think the stadium had a big part of that.
Did you come down here, Devang, for that?
Yeah. We
Nice.
did like a bus journey. It was, my God.
A bus?
Yeah. Times are had. The actual game itself was a blur.
That was when pre-game. Oh man, Henri is such an experience. That press conference, someone was like, "What's a better stadium, Red Bull or the Emirates?" And he was like, "You have forgotten my beloved Highway." And you're like, "Oh wow, Henri, you outthought the journalist." Yeah, and then everyone so stoked.
He's just that guy, you know.
I went to his debut for Red Bulls, which was actually against the Tottenham Hotspurs.
Ooh,
I remember that was a weird turn of events.
Yeah.
Moving on, Mel S asks, what is one unexpected thing that being a football fan has given you? Devang, I'll go with you first.
Oh, great question. It's funny because like I find maybe my favorite aspect of this sport is the people I've met watching it, and I think that it's weird to say this is unexpected, but I maybe I didn't think I could make such important friends in my life through this game. Maybe I didn't expect that. I expected maybe to coalesce around a TV and watch a match with people and have a good time, but I didn't think it would extend beyond that. And I think in so many ways it has for me in regards to soccer and old friendships, new friendships, friendships that involve maybe a large gap in time in terms of communication or rekindled by a crazy scoreline or a positive result for our club that we share. Like it's stuff like that I think I didn't realize how much that would impact my life. And especially when times are good and you're watching your club do cool things and sharing that with people who once upon a time we're kind of strangers is pretty special to me. So maybe I didn't expect that, and I'm thankful that I've experienced it.
My answer is going to be similar to Devang, so it's tough, but I would say the amount of people around the world that I've met. I mean, I went to the 2014 World Cup in Brazil and took a safari in Manaus into the jungle for 3 nights, and have multiple people that I met there that are not Americans that I still talk to. Went to one of the guys ended up getting married in New York, in Central Park to his wife from Scotland. And I went, like, stuff like that, where you're like, yeah, I think if you had asked, childhood me, I wouldn't have understood that that's a thing that people do, and sort of like a way to operate, in the places it's taken to me around the world and the people I get to meet. It's, I say this a lot, but it's a window and a prism to get to see the world and meet people. It's an in with a lot of people that maybe I wouldn't normally talk to, just to establish a relationship. And then, all of a sudden I'm the guy who comes in and watches Liga MX every Sunday night at the Mexican restaurant on the Upper West Side. And I walk in and the game goes on and everyone comes out from the back that's working because they need an excuse to put it on. And I'm that excuse. They're like, can say, oh, a customer requested it. And then, I hang out there every single week for 2 or 3 years. And so, it's a really special sport, and it's been really special in that way. Technically, it's how I met my wife. I'm not downgrading meeting her. I just don't know if it's like because of being a soccer fan, but we met being on the same co-ed soccer team, because people that worked at MLS sort of connected us onto that. So that would be a pretty big surprise. Good one.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know that I put that down to like being a fan exactly.
Totally. I get it.
But it's been a huge part of our relationship as well. Like, she has gone to games at Portimonense in Portugal with me, in San Jose, in Costa Rica. And they've been some of the best trips we've gone on and things we've done. And again, people we've met together that have been because of that we still have relationships with. So yeah, it's been pretty great. And I would put you on that list as well. You guys. And, now every time I go to Toronto, I roll deep.
Yeah, I think that's the one spot. Like in traveling, like I haven't traveled too much in my life, but when I do, I know I have this like quote unquote soccer or football passport that I can just sort of like roll up to a cabbie or anyone, or go to a bar and talk to a bartender and know that I have a connection. Like, I have an in to start a conversation. Whereas, like, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else in this world that you can like sort of roll up, have this in the back of your mind and be like, okay, I can have a conversation and really start to get to know people really quickly, like soccer does. It's pretty special.
Can I tell you, and if I already told this story, feel free to stop me, but this was one of the most insane stories in probably 2008. I don't know. I could Google it. One of those years there was an AFCON and it was like starting, and I was living in Boston at the time, and I had some insane day and ended up out really late and took a cab home, and the cab driver was from the Gambia or something like that. And we were talking about AFCON for like 35 minutes. I think we sat outside of my apartment chatting about it. And then I went in and left my phone in his car, and he called home, which was unfortunate because home was still my parents' home at 3:30 in the morning. And they pick up, and he was like, I found this phone in my car. And my dad's like, well, it's my son's. He goes to Northeastern, and he goes, is he the one who knows everything about African soccer? And my dad goes, yeah, that's probably him. And so the guy came back the next day, and we hung out and talked soccer more. And it was like one of those things where you're like, yeah, if we're going to talk about Drogba, then I'm here for it.
Mikey's back, and he's asking what CPL ground is your favorite, / if you haven't been there, where do you want to go? Devang, let's start with you on that one.
Devang's has to be York SCFC United Squad, right?
So the problem is my extensive history is limited here. So I would pick York Line Stadium, but I have made it a personal bucket list thing to get out to see other parts of Canada. And I really want to check out the Wanderers ground in Halifax. So that is definitely something that's on my list to do. And I mean, to see most of these stadiums, if I'm being honest. Maybe not so much the Valor one, because I've seen it on TV many times and it looks terrible. But pretty much all of the stadiums. But I'll put Wanderers Grounds at the top of the list.
Have either of you been to a game in Ottawa, USL days or CPL?
I've been to many a games in Ottawa, but not a soccer. Well, no, I might have been to a Canadian women's match in Ottawa, but no, I have not seen this iteration of Atleti or the Fury there.
Same. And I am going there this summer, so that's on the list as well.
Yeah, the stadium looks cool. I covered it for USL stuff. I think the obvious answer, if you're not saying Halifax, to me is out at Pacific at Starlight. Like, it's just so unique on TV, and I don't know, everything around it looks gorgeous. So it seems like it's worth going to and like a thing to do. Halifax would be the other one. Halifax, if they make it to the semifinal, could play Toronto again or Montreal of the Canadian Championship. And that game last year was one of the best games of the year and best atmospheres of the year. And that might be a thing that I have to try and go do. But those are the two clear ones to me where they're like unique soccer specific stadiums.
Just a shout out to Cavalry Stadium as well. The stadium is like literally a 5-minute drive from my brother-in-law, and so I want to go this summer, hang out with my brother-in-law, and then pop over to see a Cavalry game. So that's on my list. And then I went to a Forge game last year. I've been to all 3 of the Ontario teams. Stadiums, but yeah, I think you guys are right with, I think Halifax and then on the other coast, Pacific are the right ones. But I think Cavalry, I love the one side. It feels like a very Craven Cottage-ish. The only issue that I have is that the posts that sort of sit over the underhang that is going to like cut you completely off of sight lines, but
that gives you character. That's Fenway Park stuff.
I know, but as somebody who's been to Fenway Park a few times, I hate that. I love Fenway Park, but you're like, why? This is just you could fix this with modern construction. Just do it. Moving on, we got another question from Mike. It comes from, who is one person you have met in football where you're completely awestruck? David, you go first.
Completely awestruck. Whew.
Yeah.
I would like to say that I feel comfortable enough in my skin that I normally feel okay. In most settings, the obvious one is Patrick Vieira. He's like he was my favorite player when I was a kid that was not American. He carries himself in a way that like you feel his presence in the room, but he's like super kind. I've said this before. The first time I interviewed him, like he came into this room we had set up with a huge crew. We were down at preseason, I think, and he shook every person's hand in the room before he sat down and like introduced himself. I was like, yeah, we know you're Patrick Vieira. You don't have to say Patrick every time you shake people's hands. It's assumed. So he would be the big one. I never met Drogba. I was like never in the same space with him. That would have been an obvious one. MLS circles. And then the other one that comes to mind is Abby Wambach, who I interviewed when I covered her Hall of Fame induction in the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. And this is to sound good, not bad. She's a politician, and not in that she's fake, in that like it's so easy for her. She's magnetic. She's a big personality, but everyone felt connected and everyone bought into everything she was saying. And, you know, she's talking about this, but then physically pulls someone else in and like brings up something great they did. And it just was like, you could see she'd done it her whole life and it was so comfortable for her and easy for her. And you just sort of walk away. And I think awestruck is the right word there, of like, that is a person who is better at being a person than I could ever be.
I kind of in the same way where I'm looking back now and I think generally starting work at TFC, I was kind of awestruck by everyone and oh, this is super awkward and weird. And like the first time I met Michael Bradley, I remember being like, what the hell? Like this is kind of nuts. So I feel like generally that was my first couple months there at the club. But yeah, like in terms of like general awestruckness, I would say as well, maybe some of the people that I had met through like working at EA and like the marketing meetings and like meeting Kaka and being like, oh, okay, like this is someone I played with on FIFA.
Yeah.
I'd watched on TV, and now he's just a guy in front of you watching a PowerPoint. I'm like, okay, like this is pretty cool. So I would say running into people that I watched on TV a lot and just seeing them as regular people when they were done playing was pretty wild afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's something that actually, David, your answer got me thinking about actually a moment where I was just doing promo work for the Toronto Lynx back in like 2000, just freebie work, but I got press pass for Canada versus the United States women's game at Varsity Stadium. And that honestly was probably the most awestruck, because I think at that time I would have been 17, 18 years old, but it was Mia Hamm like basically telling me to like be like, hey, do you mind moving for a second? And it was just that moment of being like a 17, 18-year-old kid looking around and being like, holy shit, Mia Hamm just spoke to me. and then looking back on it today and looking at that roster, also great game, by the way. It was 2-2, and the two goats of Canadian soccer scored that day. Charmaine Hooper scored and Christine Sinclair scored. I try to think how old Christine Sinclair would have been at that time, because we're in 2023 and she's still playing. But either way, it's just that was probably the one. And then the other thing that came to my mind is also in this, like, I should have been awestruck, but it's in a moment that I didn't know who this person was, or did, but sort of made a joke of it. In 2014, in like the summer, Tottenham Hotspur trained at the training grounds at TFC. And so for 3 or 4 days, Tottenham came to the ground, and I was obviously in awe. But there was this one player, number 37, Harry Kane, who was just right. Like, but that's what I mean. Like, Harry Kane was just this no-name guy who, and then now like me in 2023 would be like, holy shit. So it's one of those things where you just gotta just remember the moment, so that when you come back on it, it's like, wow, you'd be awestruck. So it's wild. I wasn't awestruck, by the way. Mario Balotelli trained with us at the training ground in 2024. And I was like, it's just another day. But
why always me? Why always me?
Moving on, Jason G asks, if you were to bring an NWSL club to Toronto, who would be your first hire on the football side of business? Also, bonus marks, what would you name the club? Devang?
Oh, boy. Is picking Diana Matheson not allowed, considering she's starting a different league? Because I will pick her. I will pick her because I think we've seen already about her ability to make partnerships and make impactful partnerships across not just the soccer world, but in the business side as well. So she's clearly someone who I think is willing to put in the work and put in the time to build a club from the ground up. So I think that would be my first choice hire. In terms of the name, I'm struggling here because I don't want to go with like the classic Euro style, like Real or put something wild in front of it. But I do like something kind of simple. It depends where they play. I think this might be a play on a CEBL team, a basketball team up here, but maybe the Saga Stars or the Scarborough Stars if they're playing in a certain part of the city. I'd like that.
I'm pretty much of no help on this subject. So
no worries.
I will say this. So one, I don't really know where people are from specifically. So feel free to shoot down what I would
Fair.
say. I would say if I hope this happens, and two, it should happen. And if it did, I think the clear first thing you do is you drop a bag on Kadesha Buchanan, right? And you're like, the best player in the world can come play here and play at home. Ashley Lawrence as well. Are they both from Toronto? I believe
Brampton.
so. Yeah. So
Brampton.
that would be the first thing I would do.
Yeah.
I think Matheson makes a ton of sense. Karina LeBlanc obviously makes sense. Those are two people who have, like Devang said, a bit of experience building teams and building things. If I was going to go outside the box, though, I would say for coach, I think you see with situations like this, a lot of times you bring in first-time coaches, someone stepping off the field. And I'm interested about Sophie Schmidt. Just the way you watch her play the game is the way she reads the game. I think she's next level. I think she's always been next level about that. She seems like an obvious coach to me. She's still playing, but probably at the end of her career, maybe she's done and would be interested in it. I don't know that she's from, I guess I could literally just Google it. She is from Winnipeg, which is not in Toronto. Spoilers. And then she played for Vancouver. So she has no connection to Toronto. But that would be the other obvious. That I just think I won't be shocked in 10 years when she's a very successful head coach.
Fair enough. I think there's a shout out to be said for Carmelina Moscato. She's over at Tigres right now. I think that once again, she's from the region. I think she's been involved with the program for so long and has been, I think, coaching since 2016, 2017. So
she already won a title down there.
Exactly. And I think she was in Norway for a bit as well. Like, I think that she is the no-brainer call. But once again, like, I don't know what the money situation here, there, or whatever. But I think that she deserves a shout. And then I've always, even before TFC MLS days, and this has nothing to do with the City group, but I think Toronto City just has a nice ring to it. So I would be really interested into seeing Toronto City. And the blue fits.
Sean, you have been around for a while and know more about this. Is there any business soccer-y person that you would want as like being involved, and that would be a key to being successful to you? Like a Tim Leiweke type, but probably not him.
It's a good question. In the soccer world, I nothing comes to my mind. There are a lot of nothing comes to my mind right now. Okay. So sorry.
You're
good. But I do believe I would love to see them play. And this has been my MO for 5-10 years because I live around the corner from it. But Varsity Stadium in Toronto, like, it's on the University of Toronto campus. That needs to be refurbished, pushed up a bit, and it should be host of a CPL and a NWSL team.
Is that where the rugby team played?
No, that is Lamport Stadium, which is just a bit north of BMO. This is like
played rec soccer.
But yeah,
so it's already held big crowds, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Well played.
But Varsity Stadium, it was like in, let's call it 1995, where Canada would play soccer games. They then tore it down and then brought just an erector set sort of in the area. But the downtown core, it holds 5,000 right now, but you could put another side on it. That's the dream for me. Once again, I am a 5-minute walk from there, but that's where I want to see pro soccer coming next. Moving on, S. McGinnis is asking for some dirt. Tell us something, without risking your reputation, that would surprise us about working at an MLS club or the league. Devang, no risking your reputation here, but what, you got any dirt?
Maybe that, like, I don't know if this is a surprise at all, but like the whole axiom that like people don't read the press, or like teams don't read press, or like management don't read press. They read all of that. And like they are sometimes actively trying to sway opinion in it or guide a narrative or plant some seeds. And it was pretty fascinating to see it up close and see that relationship up close. So I think that would be probably my best answer. And maybe the idea of that, like, I mean, a couple of times I was sanctioned for cheering in the press box, but like the idea that you're not supposed to cheer in the press box, I think was something that I'll never forget being yelled at in Orlando. After I think we came back to win 3-2, but like
regular season game.
Yeah. I feel like that game was especially heated though. It was like something had happened.
That was like the James O'Connor days, right? Where every Orlando game was unhinged. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Before they became unhinged now.
Right.
It was the winning goal that you cheered for, though?
I think so, yes, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
But like I've seen other teams do that as well. So like that whole unwritten rule, I think was like something that I was fascinated by. Because like we literally worked for the team. So who gives a damn, honestly, in my opinion. But
well, one of the things, so a few different ways that I read this. I agree with you. So when I first got into doing what I did, I said to someone like gambling, like I'm covering a team, like I was covering a college team. And if they win games, they would host more games and I would get paid to do those games. And I was like, I have more money tied into this than you do in gambling on stuff because like this is what I do. And so I've always thought that's really interesting. Like you talk about cheering, like employees of clubs have massive bonuses tied in. Your job is easier. Like if you have any KPIs, if the team wins, you're hitting them.
Exactly.
And if the team doesn't win, you're not. And it doesn't matter how good you are at social and video production and creativity and marketing campaigns. Like you are going to, what happens to the team is going to control the way your life is. So like you have fans and you have, and now obviously gambling is a massive part of following sports. And like the people working for the teams, I think are experiencing all of that at a way higher level. And you just have to fake it that you're not. And I've kind of always like thought that was unfortunate and unnecessary. I got yelled at for cheering at a US Open Cup final, not for a team. I just, sometimes when I watch soccer, I like being like, shoot, oh, good ball. Like I didn't care who won. And someone was like, hey, that's like, you shouldn't do that. We're in the press box. I was like, get out of here. Like I care. I don't care about either of these teams. So that's kind of what my big thing is, just the way you engage with the sport. And then I would say, I think everyone knows this, but all of these organizations are way smaller and less professional than you think they are. And I'm not just talking about North America. I'm talking about Bayern. I'm talking about Man U. I'm talking about Chelsea. I'm talking about FIFA. Like it would blow your mind how poorly most of these organizations are run and how small most of these organizations are, and like the amount that individuals are doing and the lack of levels between. I just started and I heavily affect the way this team is, or this organization is being put together.
What's yours, Sean? I'm curious.
I think the thing, without like picking a specific, is that how many marketing initiatives, whether it be player signings, player trades, or like how much has been created that nobody ever sees. And like it was like, without saying a specific moment, but it was always a joke at TFC that there's this warehouse full of all these like designated player deals that like should have unfurled down the Air Canada Centre / Scotiabank Place, or like this and that.
The Totti post, there's the Diego Forlan statue.
Exactly. Like, or the Inukshuk that was in front of the Kia training grounds that was supposed to be made, but then somebody got fired, and then that thing that was ordered got put to a shipping container. Like, I think that that's something that I've always joked about as being like, when we look back 10, 15 years down the line, I think it's a great content series of like opening up this like storage locker and going through the Diego Forlan banner that was supposed to be like 300 feet tall, or the, whatever, X, Y, and Z that was supposed to happen. The Belotti bus that was supposed to go out. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of different things that are created and like hard created t-shirts, etc. I sent a picture actually to my friend group the other day, just because I was cleaning up my phone, of a box of t-shirts with the CONCACAF Champions League winners with TFC on it, because I saw it in the depths of the Chivas Stadium that day. So there's tons of that stuff out there, and I think that it's if you think that it's that deep down the line, there's probably something created with the person's name on it. So that's what I would say.
It's I had a gym teacher who used to always get her hands on the losing team's championship t-shirts, and our giveaways for like, best flag football team over the course of the 4-week whatever was always like New York Yankees 2001 championship t-shirts.
That's amazing.
So great.
Speaking of things we don't normally talk about because we want to be professional, we got a question of what did Devang, David, and Sean do the night that TFC won the cup at BMO Field? David, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, because mine won't be as good. But I do remember it was an earlier kickoff than 2016, so it wasn't, 2016, I just remember, I'm pretty sure Dwayne De Rosario hosted a party across the street, a post-game party, and it was that late night kick, and it was just a funeral with a DJ blasting and no one doing anything, and that was rough. 2017, though, I was texting actually because I saw this question in the rundown with a friend, trying to remember, and we went to a restaurant called Biblos. It's a fancy Middle Eastern restaurant that night, and then we went out and went drinking the rest of the night, and I think I ended up, as usual at the time, back at the hotel drinking the rest of the free association alcohol that was not used by sponsors and whatnot. And then took my friend out the next day to Miku Sushi. That I remember, to celebrate, because I stuck around for I covered the parade, which was one of the best things I think I've ever done in my entire life. And I was standing there seeing all of your PR staff and seeing Josie go pick up the mic. And I turned to the cameraman and I said, no one's got eyes on Josie right now. And he just picks his camera up, and we're too far away, and he starts, and I was like, yeah, that went exactly how I thought it would.
So 2016, I remember I had just moved to Vancouver for my new job, but I flew back for the final and then watched the game. And then I remember I met up with Sean afterwards, and we drank for a while after that. And then 2017, I was in India. So I was watching the game at my uncle's place on my phone, using Wi-Fi, outside in the middle of the night, going mental, with some lag. There was heavy lag, actually, to be honest, but
just getting texts and then the goal scored 2 minutes later.
It was me, my brother-in-law, and my sisters watching it on the porch, but that was kind of surreal as well, because I was literally thousands of miles away, but getting messages and talking with people, or trying to talk with people, and watching on my phone. So it was it's a pretty wild night, wild contrasts and experiences as well. Because 2016, God, that was a funeral, was right. That was sad.
Yeah, 2017 was a bit of everything, because I was working that game, so I was in the press box with my team, sort of building what could have happened, how it was all going to go down, and all that kind of stuff, and then also managing everyone else's excitement while I'm dying inside, being like, "Holy shit, we're going to do this!" And so I was like, "Okay, I'm going to man the press box. I'll send a couple of my teammates down to the field. They'll get video, all that kind of stuff. And then the graphic designer sat beside me. And so she got to see me literally break down in tears in the press box. And then all of a sudden, like there is this just large bang on the glass of the press box. Anyone who doesn't know, BMO Field is like basically 3 large panes of glass, and then at the bottom there's like all these seats that you could people could turn back and like see who's working the game. And then there's this bang on the glass, and it's my mother, and she's crying, and she said, "We did it, Shawnee," and I'm crying. And then the graphic designer beside me is like crying because she's seeing me cry. And I'm like, yeah, we did. Nobody else is in the press box. Thank God. Everyone else was going down to the field for quotes. That all happens. So that's an incredible moment. And then following the game, because of numbers and staffing and everyone wanting to get on the ride, my staff couldn't go to the after party, or a couple of them couldn't. So I gave them my tickets to go. And so I then went to a local bar with my friends that prior to being a part of TFC went to go see and hang out with them from like whatever midnight to 2:00, and I saw the rest of the night out with my U sector friends that I started with back in like whatever 2002 to 2014, or sorry, so 2017. So it was a real nice moment, but it was definitely not the bright lights and celebrating with the team that day. So that's one of those things. Depending on like what you care about and how you're associated, it is one of those funny things where, again, you care about this immensely and it's your job. And so there's like weird moments back and forth. I will say the one thing I have always cheered for more than anything is MLS winning CCL. And I missed my flight after first leg Chivas 2018 final. I came up to Toronto on my own to go to the game as a fan, and then drank post game with people till 4 a.m. And my flight out of Billy Bishop was 6:15 a.m., which I don't know what I thought was going to happen. And I woke up and I was like, nope, didn't make that. And ended up having to get on a different flight home. Yeah, it's, I will say the next day things got, the parade day things got silly, and we got photos and videos on my phone that will never see the light of day. We got a couple one-off questions. First for Devang. What was the most awkward TFC player interview you did with the club?
For the most part, I think I had positive experiences with the players. We had like the series where we would interview a player on the podcast we did weekly. And for the most part, it was quite good. I would say awkward, or maybe like the vibes were slightly off. It would be Robbie Finley, maybe, just because like I don't know if he was fully briefed on what he was doing or like what he was signing up for. So it was a strained conversation. We were talking about some of his businesses outside of work, but I don't know if I was showing enough interest in those businesses. So it was awkward. So I think that might be my pick.
Was it real estate stuff?
No, it was a barber shop, I think, but it was like, it had a unique hook that I'm struggling to remember, but I wasn't really getting into it at that point. So it was a strained conversation.
He drove a Bentley, so those extracurriculars must have been doing well.
One of my favorite memories is Robbie Finley driving a Bentley to like the gravel parking lot at BMO Field where the players parked. I'm like, oh God, like that paint job is a danger. That is not good.
And David, very different question, but can you name a all-time 5-a-side team for the best of CONCACAF?
Oh.
Yeah.
5-a-side men's only?
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Let's go with that for now. Yeah.
Even bigger.
Yeah.
5-a-side. Yeah. So 5-a-side means ballers only. I don't need defenders. I don't need goalkeepers. Like I just want touch and move, right?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do one per country. I'm going to limit myself. So I'm going to do Clint Dempsey, Cuauhtemoc Blanco, Dwight York.
Ooh.
So those are easy 3 out the gates. I think then, So that also eliminates those 3 countries from other people. So I think then I'm going to go D-Row.
There we
because
go.
I don't need speed.
No.
Like open field speed. Not that D-Row didn't have it. And he's a finisher and he's a baller. So I'm going to go D-Row. That's 4. And my 5th, I'm also eliminating countries there. Jamaica's a little tough because like it's tough to say who really played for them and how much CONCACAF experience they got. So maybe I think I'll go Brian Ruiz.
Ooh, good pick.
Yeah, that's a hell of a team. I when you started listing like Deuce and all this, I'm like, you got to go D-Row. Like D-Row's so good with his short touches. It was just like.
Although I would say in a team like that, 5s, Atiba would be very good. Right? Like constantly keeping the ball moving, doing a little more defending than everyone else. But yeah, no, D-Row's one of those, and you guys know this better than me, but like 20 years later, like what would his career be if he was coming through now is like kind of wild to think about.
Completely. It's wild. Like there was the other day, like I follow D-Row on Instagram, but he starts like lately he's been showing a lot of like older clips. And there was just one where he was going, I think like 1v3 and he just absolutely like and it was probably like 21, 22 at the time. And you're just like, how did we waste such an incredible talent? And like when you look at his career, there was nothing wasted, but it's just on the grand scale of like what he could do with the ball, what he did. It was just, it feels like a bit of a waste. It's wild.
It worked for MLS. He won a lot of trophies.
Yeah, completely. Last but not least, because I think this one's going to be a bit loaded. Canada national team versus Canada soccer. How does this all end? Devang?
Good question. I don't think, I believe we're waiting for the hearing now the parliamentary hearing with the board members and the people from the CSA, but we've had the players speak in Ottawa and the MPs doing absolutely zero homework before that was not a surprise, but I hope they are prepared a little better when the CSA comes calling. I don't know. I feel like the relationship with Charmaine Crooks already seems not tenable immediately. I think it's partly due to the fact that she was around beforehand, and I'm not sure if that relationship can be repaired. And that already says to me that they have to start over. So I think it will require them starting over entirely at the board level. Now, will they do that with the World Cup planning underway and the idea that they're going to have more matches in Canada with the expansion of the tournament? I don't know. I really don't. I don't have a good answer here. I don't know what the solution is other than the CSB maybe reworking their deal or offering maybe some more transparency and saying maybe we can limit the term here on this contract we signed.
Yeah, I think it is tough to look into the future and try and figure it out because pretty much everything happening is fairly unprecedented. And this is, on a day after a 42-page investigation into the U.S. M&T's coach and parents of players and stuff. So, like, it's not just Canada right now. I think one of the big things that I've taken away from covering this Canada fiasco and now covering U.S. soccer is, and I've said this a couple times, the players have reached a level that the organizations are not on, right? Like Nick Bontis, right? He wasn't paid. Like, why do you have a volunteer position running an organization that has Steven Eustachio and Alphonso Davies and Ashley Lawrence and Kadesha Buchanan playing for them? Like, those are world-class players that play at the biggest clubs in the world. Why are they, then going and playing for a volunteer organization? Like, a lot of that stuff just doesn't make any sense. The belief that government's going to come in and fix it is pretty far-fetched, I think, for a lot of people. So my hope is that the generation of players who have a level of professionalism can get some control. And I think to like Pat Onstad runs an MLS club now, full time. And you talked about Diane Matherson, and obviously we see, Christine Sinclair going and talking, in these big high leverage moments. Like, it feels like there's enough soccer / professionalism there to try and lean in that direction and have them, who I think the players then will have a level of trust with, sort of start to run things. And I think that's the one thing you've seen on the U.S. soccer side. Cindy Parlow-Cohn, and then Ernie Stewart, Kate Margraf, and obviously Brian McBride leaving, Stewart leaving, and we don't know what happens with Greg Berhalter, but like trying to have that connection. I think that's a path forward in terms of building the organization at a better level, and then having some trust between players and the people above them. But whether that happens or not, I can't say. And right now we're in danger of all 3 countries in this region hosting the World Cup wasting it. Like, Mexico's a mess. U.S. soccer is a mess. And now Canadian soccer is as well.
Yeah, it's not a good time. And I that's the thing, is I gonna echo what you guys said. Like, unless there's somewhere down the line where they can, or the CSB is going to be like, you know what, we're going to renegotiate it of the goodness of our hearts, which they're also like, to be perfectly honest, like, if they're running the Canadian Premier League, like, they're not making hand over fist. So this is sort of like the coffers that helps them maintain this league. So you're sitting here being like, well, nobody's going to break here, so therefore you're just going to get pissed off players for a pissed off team that is under funded, and we're gonna hopefully in 15 years figure this out. Like, I don't know how this ends unless the CSB makes the decision to share some wealth back into, or find a way, or like show a business plan where it's like, okay, after X amount of dollars, we will then funnel it back into the system. I just don't know. We're in a sad state, and it should be celebrated that like we're going into a World Cup in the summer where the women should be a contender, and we should be hosting a men's World Cup in 2026, and it should be exciting. And we are here in 2023, hands up, being like, ugh.
The one hope or dream or whatever saving grace could be that if these players on both the men's and women's side are so good that they just keep winning things and making money from that, there might then be enough money for people to be more open to what you're talking about, because all of a sudden there's an influx. And hosting a World Cup is supposed to do that. Like, that's what 2015 was, right? And helping build out grassroots level, helping build out the pipeline that an Alphonso Davies then came through, and Jonathan David then came through. Like, that's what 2015 was supposed to create. Obviously, there were mistakes made coming out of that with CSB, and that's the hope of what 2026 will be. And if the women go and win the World Cup, and then go and win an Olympics, and the men win a Copa America, like that is another way for them to save this on the field, which is, I think, more realistic.
Completely fair enough. Before I hand it over to you, Devang, any last thoughts before we close it up?
No, I'm glad we went out with a long one like we usually did when we recorded late into the night, and fond memories of doing that. Recorded a lot of podcasts in this apartment. I'm recording it right now, and I'm moving out soon, so it also feels like the end of many things dramatically.
It's been fun, boys.
Yeah, very sad.
We'll leave it there. After nearly 3 years of weekly check-ins, that is it for us. I just want to say again, thanks to anyone and everyone who has ever listened to an episode of a football podcast, whether it was the first time, 10 times, or 100 times. It meant the world to us that you came here to get our takes and our opinions and our terrible jokes. Thanks for listening to us. Thanks to our Patreon community for supporting us throughout all these months and for generating such lively discussion in the Discord, which we hope to keep going. Massive thank you again to the Space Monkey team, Clay behind the scenes, getting the show off the ground. I worked with Clay so many times throughout my career, and I feel very lucky to say that. And the passion he exudes and the effort he puts into projects, it's really unparalleled. So I want to send a massive thanks to him, and thanks to Dylan and Greg and Zach and Nick for helping us make this show every week. Random times, coordinating, scheduling, getting us in one room was not easy. But those guys were legends, and they made this show sound wicked as well. So massive thanks to them. Nick was a big part of the show on the air as well, and friends for life, and a big fan of his and all he does. So thank you to those guys. Without them, this show does not happen, and without you guys, this show does not happen. So for one last time, for producer Greg on the ones and twos, and for Sean and David, thank you so much for listening to AFP. Take care.